Hey everyone, we are about to go live with my Qigong and Chinese medicine teacher, TJ Frank. So, for any of you who haven't, there we go. So, it should be ready in a few moments. So, we are going to be talking about a lot of ways in which we can heal our mind, body, soul holistically, not just from a spiritual perspective, not just from a scientific perspective, but from a holistic perspective. And this is what I've learned from uh, TJ's teachings is that Chinese medicine is a powerful way for us to integrate holistic approach to not only just our health but our entire life in general is integrated with mind, body, and spirit. There we go. Just waiting for the master to load. All right. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we'll get this. We'll get this right. It's going to be well worth it. So for everyone just joining, we're going to go live with my Qigong.
There we go.
Aloha, brother.
Aloha. Do you have my audio as well?
Yes, everything is crystal clear now.
Ha!
Here we go.
Good morning.
Good evening over here. All right, TJ. So for everyone who's here and everybody who's watching, just would like to have you introduce yourself and a bit of what led you to this path of teaching you're now in.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. My name's TJ Frank. I have a master's degree in Chinese medicine. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, certified Qigong instructor from several Chinese lineages in China. What got me here? Everything in life, man. Everything I've ever been through. It all, in hindsight, it's a lot clearer. Some of the points, I don't even understand how. How does the river make it to the sea? Some of it you know, some of you don't. I had a lot of what I judged to be pressure from my family to be a medical doctor, but I knew my truth of truths. It was close to my calling, but it wasn't the real thing for me. So I worked within the hospital system for 14 years in all sorts of medical technician jobs, trying to find a home for my professional heart. And one day I was working in the emergency room, and the ER physician, we were working a cardiac case, and all the tests were negative. And he leaned to me, he's like, look, what I'm doing isn't, be quiet. Go to my house on the clock in uniform, and behind my desk is a bag, a leather bag. Go get it and come back and don't tell anyone. So I did it, and I came back to the ER, and we drawed the drapes around the cardiac room, and he pulled out acupuncture needles and stuck them into this lady, and her heart pain went away. And he kind of went into this glassy-eyed trance look and said, look, I see you dragging your feet, going to medical school. Have you ever considered becoming an acupuncturist?
Wow.
It was just like, And I was at that stage in my life. I was just coming into my Saturn return. I was trying to find my identity in the world and how I could serve man, how I could use this life in a way that lit me up and helped others. And so I had that longing, and this presented itself, and I looked through the course curriculum of acupuncture school, and every class I was just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. And I'm like, you can make a career out of doing this? Woo! So I signed up for acupuncture school without ever having a needle placed into my body. There were other road signs that were equally as clear, but that's just what happened for me. Yeah, so that's the intro how I got into Chinese medicine. And that being said, my family is a refugee family that fled Europe before World War II to Shanghai. And my grandparents lived for 20 years in Shanghai, and my father was raised in Shanghai and immigrated to Berkeley after the war. So I'm a first generation American from a Chinese European family. So I believe that my spirit picked up, my ancestral lineage picked up a Chinese spirit in China that passed through my father into this form. I can't prove that.
Yeah.
So that's just a little bit. Yeah, what you got?
I was just gonna say that's fascinating that you bring that up. That genetic hiccup, that's been something that's a theme that's coming up today. Is a lot of things that residually come through family lineage, and how we have ancestors who bring a lot of skills through us and a lot of wisdom through us. And that's actually part of the reason I was brought back to Hawaii and met you. Was I had my parents had been to Hawaii and my grandparents had been to Hawaii, and really picked up a lot of that aloha energy. And when I came to Hawaii, some of my Hawaiian friends called me Mr. Aloha, and it's like, what you just brought up made me think, that's kind of like coming through the family lineage as well. So I didn't even know that your parents had been in China and in Shanghai and really picked up on that. Something I would like to ask is, what are some ways in which you think that, just because I know from my own experience of soaking up all the wisdom that you share, what are some ways that people can practically integrate Chinese medicine or Qigong or Chinese elemental theory into their lives to have a better emotional quality of life?
Ooh. That's it. So there's a method called 6 sounds therapy, Qigong, by which we put our body into particular postures to stretch the meridian and the organs, and then invoke different sounds to harmonize and resonate each of the organs, and that each organ resonates with different emotions. So harmonizing the organs harmonize the emotions. And it's called 6 sounds therapy, Qigong. It's a wonderful method. And I used to use that a lot, especially on the table. I would put people into the postures through shiatsu and have them evoke the sounds to resonate the organs, to free up and harmonize the emotions that would cause the clenching of the associated organ. After working that way for quite some time, I recognized once they cleared the emotions, they would spontaneously go to Ha. There was one breath beyond all. There was one form beyond them all. And that you spoke towards the aloha spirit. And for the greater community of the world, aloha means greetings with the breath of Ha. And the Hawaiians, when they meet, they walk up and they press nose to nose. And they take a deep breath in. And then they release Ha in each other's face, which means I'm celebrating the gift of life, the breath of life, with you right now. We are both here. And to me, that's the essence beyond any of the different sounds. I like to say, the start at the finish. We can spend so many years in Gestalt therapies of beating up pillows and emotional resurrection and family lineage, transformational work. And I've done so much of all, and it's wonderful and it's important. But don't get stuck in it. Remember, the end goal is the equanimitous, God-invoked state of seeing it all everywhere. And to do so, for me, Ha is one of those centering devices, the breath of Ha. So As an Ashtangi and as a yogi, I'm of the belief that drishti, mind focus, and pranayama, breath quality, is all we really have in any given moment. So when observing breath and mind, we can see emotionally where we're going, what we're thinking about, and what we feel. And then mind focus to the gate of light, whatever that means to you, which can be seen in the unmanifested or the manifested form. Your choice, doesn't matter. See it wherever you see it, and then take the breath to recognize that you see that. And then it comes back. Comes back. And I like to play it just to the point where the heart iris opens to the point where it's just before one tear, rather than the heart twitching retching, which I think it's important to go to the heart twitching retching a whole bunch, just to fall through the heart iris to know what that feels like. But eventually in my own personal bhakti or devotional or emotional practice, of all the emotions, I like fluidity with all of them. I like to be able to go into any one of them without grip of restraint, that I'm not willing to go there, that it'll hurt too much to go there, that I'm, whatever the grip of restraint might be. And I also don't want to have any grip of attachment. I am this, I am that, I'm stuck. You know, I want to be able to go into any of the emotions with full fluidity, without resistance, without attachment, allow them to, but if I'm going to exercise one, the heart is the one that I exercise, because I'm a bhakta. I'm trying to connect to spirit of love and God through my heart. And there's no wrong way. You can go kundalini, you can go tantra through the lower chakras. There's lots of different methods to connect to the heart of whatever you want to call it, God, love, an emotional piece, but I'm going through the heart. So as we think and practice, this stuff really works. You can find it through any of the emotions. I'm just choosing to use the heart, which is the centerpiece of the Chinese medicine model. The Chinese don't believe the brain's the center of the system. They consider the heart the center of the human system. To summarize that whole thing up, the breath of Ha. Keep the mind on something pleasant, keep the breath on Ha. And just, I tell people 51% of the time. 51%. Nobody's, Jesus, we can't hold ourselves to 100. The waves are too strong. The waves are too strong. So allow yourself. But I figure if we can get 51%, over a long period of time, it'll create consciousness there. It'll tend there.
That's a beautiful way of explaining that, and it's interesting. I had another mentor of mine say, "The heart is where the journey starts." Which is interesting. You brought it up as the heart is the goal and love is the goal, and it's like the end is the beginning. And that's where, in working with you and receiving healing from you and receiving teachings from you, is just constant reminders, like both two things that you spoke about, that just the heart and the breath is so healing and transformative, and that we're not a fully realized enlightened being, or else we most likely wouldn't exactly. We're like, the 51% is such a good way of looking at it, because I catch myself so many times being like, sometimes I'm really blissed out, heart-centered, everyone around me is receiving magnificent healing. And then sometimes I'm like triggered by some little thing, and then I'm suddenly in shadow. So it's a good reminder that I've learned from you, is to constantly humble oneself to teachers and to the teachings of life, so as you don't get caught up in like the I am, what you were talking about before, letting your emotions, your chi flow freely and your heart flow freely, instead of being like, I am this, I am that. Because once I say to myself, oh, I am masterful, then all of a sudden masterful is how Owen operates, and then it's like, oh wait, this isn't actually my soul, this is like how I would act if I was this or that. So that's a really wonderful reminder. I worked with that the other day with my grandma. Actually, I'm caretaking for my grandma before I make my big move to the United Kingdom, and I just she was saying, "Oh, my neck is in so much pain. My neck is in so much pain," and she's like talking about it very Western science-wise. I said, just emotionally take the world off your shoulders. Do a hot breath, and just I gave her some Reiki, and her shoulders have been like dropped down here, and totally relaxed since that moment. And that hot breath is so powerful.
As you know, with my work on the table, I also do other things with the emotions, such as emotional resurrection and transformation. So I squeeze on people's bodies through the meridians and the organs, knowing which emotions are associated with each pathway. Consciously observing people's wrinkle patterns, facial patterns, body patterns, story patterns, it all indicates to me what emotion they're holding. And then I burrow in through the channels, opening it up to the point they can't hold the flesh anymore. The memories, the feelings are in the body. And there's a system to understand what emotions go where. Fear on the back, indecision on the side, forward moving stuff on the front. It's positioned in such a way that there's a system that studies it, and a practice that I use by which I go into the body looking for the hold in the meridian and then opening that up. And then I bring it up and I make the person feel it to the point they can't hold it anymore. And I have them bring it up, and that's the emotional resurrection part. I need to bring it up on occasion. And this is a big debate, because there's a lot of spiritual methods. I don't want to offend anybody, but one understanding of Buddhism is to not engage the emotion, to see the wave come in, watch the wave come out, stay focused on Anapurna, the focused mind, and don't engage the waves. And there's validity to that. But sometimes I actually will engage and activate and amplify the wave so that the birth of trauma will come up out of the person's body, so that when they're in the peak of the storm, I'll have them take the ha to soften it in their being. And sometimes I'll laugh with them, and I'll just stare and cry with them and just open up and bathe them and invite them to bathe that part of themselves too. And then it fucking twitches and light and tingle and burn and revelations and associations. And it's just a tremendous breakthrough experience. But it's important when taking a person into the cave to have a rope and a ladder and a light to get out. I don't want people to think that self-flatulating or masochism is the only way to go. But I do use the emotions to help people identify the holdings of the body. And I use the holdings of the body to help people identify their emotions, so that the breath of Ha, or the spirit of lightness, can be brought into it to soften it up in their form. That relieves them of physical symptoms, purifies the crystal, and increases their spiritual connectivity. And then from there, all sorts of CDs or powers and developments come out.
So what would you recommend for somebody who is I don't want to say beginner's level healer, but somebody who's like just getting into, say somebody like, for me, the first door that I walked through was Reiki. Somebody who's at that kind of like beginner level, and they start to get that ego, they start to get I'm a healer, like you were talking about in class one time, I'm a masterful healer. When they first get that, what would you say would be the steps for somebody who's like, just becoming a yogi or just becoming a Reiki practitioner, acupuncturist? How can they get to not the same level that you are, but like continually supplement their practice so as they don't flatline and think that they're greatness of God, and they are in a sense, but like not really as masterful as they could be, if that makes any sense.
There's a couple questions there, but I think the answers are the same. The questions as I hear them is, what do you do to check a person's ego as they go through developing their powers? Mm-hmm. And the other is how to keep them invigorated, to keep them going. Yeah. It sounded in your question. My funny face reactions to your first question, what do you do to help somebody check their ego? Duck and cover. Run, duck, and cover. Run, duck, and cover. What I mean by that is if you come out that way, fucking spirit's gonna show you, you know. I was thinking, yeah, I've been advised many times spirit has very little room for pride. Oh, what do you do with that one? I'm still, it's like chewing on gristle. So run, duck, and cover. The spirit, if we're working with energies and spirit, then we got to be a conduit. It's not us, it's through us. And regardless, so to answer it another way is the practice will show us. People will take offense. People will I mean, what the universal medium will reflect that impact of our actions upon others and reflect it back to us so that we learn. It'll come back. One way or another, it'll come back. One way or another. So that's why I'm like, run, duck, and cover. It's so much better than not fucking launching a bomb. And it's
that's such a perfect way of describing that. Such a perfect way of describing that. And that's I remember what you told us in class that one time when you checked yourself when somebody came in and was like, I'm a Reiki master, and it was like, you're like, oh yeah, okay, let's show you how Reiki master you are. And that's I think everybody gets that message. Everybody gets that it's not you, it's through you. And that's a constant reminder I'm receiving in Qigong and in any practice when I'm doing Reiki, when I'm doing oracular psychic work. It's always, I always catch myself whenever somebody's like, oh, you are magnificent, and like the compliments come in and it's like a like bait sitting in front of a lion, and I'm like, not me, it's your ancestors, not me, it's nature. Like I'm just a channel. And you hit that so clearly and concisely that whoever we are, whether we're considering ourselves a healer in the medical or spiritual science field, or just living life and wanting to be a more loving, heart-centered person, being able to understand that there are so many forces flowing through us. The sunlight is charging us up with vitamin D, and the trees are giving us oxygen, and the grass is tickling our toes. It's like so much that's like nature's like, hey, this is for the betterment of everybody, not just your human suit in this particular lifetime. And with that, I'd like to make that connection with Qigong. So that's something that Qigong is very clearly universal energy that is flowing through us during a Qigong practice. What are some of the wisdoms as well as some of the learning experiences that have come through your progressive path of studying Qigong?
Well, to go back one moment real quick, the second question last time on how to keep a person going in the face of the humility is just do the practice. Some things are going to work out really well beyond your understanding, and some things are going to flop in your face. And the more they flop in the face, the more humbled we become, as far as knowing that we're just adventurers on the path trying to show up the best that we possibly can in any given day based on our circumstances. That brings in the humility to when somebody says you're a master, great, you fucked up, I'm sorry. Being detached from the outcome of our situation and showing up the best that we can seems so much more important as a practice than the social validation of somebody saying that I'm a master or me feeling masterful. Because if I feel masterful and if I fuck up, then I feel really bad. And that hurts me because I'm altruistic, I really want to help. So I just want to show up in the very best way I can and be detached from the outcome of my experience and show up the best I can. And that's enough work for me. Now this goes into the Qigong, which is why I mentioned it. As a Qigong practitioner, one thing I've learned is just show up. Do it. Just do it. Just do it. And sometimes it's going to blow you off sparkle pants. I mean, just celestial astral rocket ship with spirit beings and animal guides and levitation and visual force. I mean, just like, I mean, people calling you from around the world, you came to me in astral form and you did this and that. And all of those things are going to happen. And there's going to be other days you're like, this sucks. I'm bored. I want to eat. This is ridiculous. What am I doing? You know, those humbling moments, like no matter what I do, I just can't get the connection. What's wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Have I fallen out of grace? Any of these things. So the answer to both is just keep showing up. Sometimes it's going to be off the charts. Other times it's not going to be very stellar. And don't be attached to the outcome. Show up, do your best. I mean, it's the same thing. Just keep your mind on holy and keep your breath on off. Okay, now I did Qigong. Today I didn't. Today I did. Today I didn't. Today was amazing. Yeah, just do it. Qigong's off the charts. I mean, and it's so vast. I mean, there's so many forms. Just keep doing a form, just learning forms until you find one that you're just like, oh my gosh, this gives me the breath wind like no other. Get your root form. Get your form that's your fallback. That you're like, I woke up today, I have no idea what's wrong with me. I don't feel connected. I'm going to do some Qigong. Get your root form and really cultivate a lesson of spirit with that. And then after that, start learning all sorts of other forms and develop a medical repertoire. Develop some forms for the lung, for the brain, for the connective tissue, for the skin, for sleep, for heart-centeredness. There's Qigong forms for all these things. So that's another thing that keeps Qigong fresh. First is getting something that really hits your life's purpose, passion, meaning, that's just lockstep harmonic. That'll invite passion in your practice. Once you got that passion in practice, get a whole bunch of different forms because it's fun. Some are like this and some are like that. It keeps it interesting. And then develop your medical repertoire. Show up, enjoy your practice. Keep your drishti as much as you can and keep your breath as much as you can. The rest is just an experience.
Awesome. Yeah, that's has stuck with me through my entire Qigong practice. So now it's a much younger practice than yours, but it's like that's what has kept it. This is just everything you said was so on point. Every morning I've been doing heaven and earth style. That's been my root style, just from the turtle Qigong that you shared with me. That's been the one that keeps pulling me back into, because some days I'll be way up in the cosmos and need to physically dense and more practical, and then some days I'll be needing some days it's the opposite. I'm like too dense and too deep in the earth and deep into physicality and all this stuff, and then I need that airy fairy stuff. But that cycle has been. And then today I practiced on your YouTube. I highly recommend for everybody who ends up seeing this video, get on TJ's YouTube and his Instagram. Just the Great White Crane Qigong has been clearing out the lungs, and it's really fascinating that Qigong for me is one of those practices that definitively shows me and shows the world in which it is existing that it's not just woo-woo sort of out there. It's a spiritual science. It's a physical science. I'm constantly being reminded. I did the release during the Great White Crane Qigong when you're taking the gunk out of your lungs and sending it outwards, when you're gathering up the lung gunk and sending the gnarly energy outwards. Right after that, we were talking about ancestral stuff earlier. I went through, was cleaning out my my grandmother's utility room, and immediately that so for anyone who hasn't practiced Qigong or Chinese medicine, lungs has to do with self-esteem and self-worth and inspiration, and I was presented with that gunk physically. I was going through and cleaning up out of this utility room and found my parents' wedding pictures. And now my parents had a really harsh divorce, and that was like my source of self-worth diminishing, because that became basically an object to be bartered for legally, to be battled over, and to be diminished, so easier to control. And literally I was confronted with that self-worth trauma or gunk, and they're divorced, so I'm like, I threw the shit out. It's like, who's holding on to this? And it was closure for me, and that was like, blew my mind, really.
That's a harsher thing about Qigong and all these practices, is they are holographic. And when I train somebody in a Qigong form, I first show them the whole form, and then I show them 2 moves and give them a week to practice the 2 moves, and then come back and show me the 2 moves, and I clean it up, and then I give them 2 more moves. They go for a week, practice, show me all 4 moves, I clean it up, I give them 2 more moves, and I add 2 until they get the whole form. Once they get the whole form, I say you have to practice it every day for 100 days in a row to get it in the body, so that it's automatic as a reflex mechanism. And then I tell them, you know, this is going to change you. And by doing this form every day, it's going to open you up and open up channels and blockages in your being, and you're going to have to go through some stuff. To get from A to B, it's not just practicing. Things are going to come up. And it's amazing, amazing to watch, you know, the lung people and their lung stuff that come up. And I taught a person Daimai Qigong, and watching how when that release and all, I mean, physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, financial. I taught a woman jade body and lung crane, and it opened up so much that her hands started burning with stigmata pains and opened up into ulcerated rashes. And for 3 months, she had eczema and ulcerated rashes in Laogong as she was opening this part. Years of story structure and validation around the story structure, and all those experiences from the initial wound to the repeat play out of the drama dance to all the associated story mechanisms and the relationship to all the story actor dramas that validated the stories. As that opened up, all of that came up in her, and then she had the physical symptoms. And now that she's cleared it through, she's so much more beautiful, being light and confident, and financially she's made so much more money. She's dropped into this wherewithal and presence of her being going through it now that she's completed that process. And I've seen some get halfway through and they fall. They get a third of the way through and ulcerated sores come up in places of their body, or pain, or neuralgias, or shoots, man, shoots. And so this stuff works. So yeah, in studying the form, it does change the body, and in that changes happen.
Yeah, and to be a living testament of that too, just following up with your heaven and earth style and continually practicing that. I've had several situations where and a lot of them have happened on key energy points in the world. So a few of them were, for example, being on Haleakala practicing Qigong, and being on Mount Hood in Oregon practicing Qigong, and being in at the Rhine Falls in Switzerland, and that's a funny story, in Qigong. And each of those moments when I was bringing up the earth chi, there was this overwhelming sense of bliss. Sometimes it even like just saw white light for a bit and just went into bliss mode. And I would be in that state of bliss, and then all of a sudden there would be, early in the stages of this progression, as you were talking about, there would be this sort of like the down of that spike of bliss energy would be like, oh, am I worthy of this? And I would like feel into my mom, who was really, would like say really gnarly things to me, about me, all these things. And there would be like you're saying, the drama stories and the drama actors. And then progressively that just got more and more clear. It was like I could identify, okay, bring up the earth chi, I'm going to get this bliss rush of energy. I'm going to get this like wealth of healthiness flowing through my body. And I am worthy of this. And I am okay to feel this. This is real. And it culminated, this practice culminated with the other day, I was sharing this practice with two friends of mine by a campfire. And as I was bringing up the earth chi, this time I got that total bliss wave, that total earth energy bliss wave. And my mind thought, this very clear thought, it said, I love everything in existence. And it was just that. And there was no down. There was no, thinking about the drama or the stories or the actors. It was just that Qigong practice got me to this space of, I love everything in existence. And I said that to my friends, and we had cast these little pieces of paper with affirmations on them into the fire. And my friend Lexi, she says, you know what, that's really trippy, because that's what I wrote on my piece of paper. I wrote, I love everything in existence. And then my friend Dave looks over and he's like, you know what, makes this even more trippy, because that's what I wrote on my piece of paper without looking at it. And it was just this whole beautiful unfolding of events where just Qigong brought me there, and as a teacher, you brought me there, and love you too, Dimitri, my brother. And yeah, that's I can't say mahalo or thank you enough for you and all the teachers that brought us that collectively to that moment. And Qigong was such a huge part of that.
Yeah, Qigong definitely helps me resurrect myself out of the greater density of this earth when it gets too heavy, as you were speaking. It's a wonderful tool to upregulate the body and to connect to the finer energies, which is lovely. And then these moments are confirming, that it exists, which is really useful to revalidate to us that there is something more than just the gross mundane reality, that there is this energetic field that connects all of us. And then, as you mentioned, the bliss state's wonderful. The risk of it is when you lose it. So where I'm trying to work in my life now is to find it in all places. I want greater stability. I want it all the time. My hunger is way too vast to just get it when it's on. I want it all the time, regardless of the people, places, or events in and around me. My goal is to get it at all times. And then Qigong becomes a practice to refine an ability that we then carry throughout our entire day, through every action and activity that we ever come across. That's the closest thing I could think of emancipation of suffering in this lifetime. And then if I can hold that state while still being in service to myself and others, while still producing food, and relieving suffering in all ways that I can, now I've actually done something with it. I mean, for me to just go into a monastery and to hold the pole is a useful thing, and I've done that, locked myself away. But once we can find that Qigong bliss state within ourselves, holding it throughout our entire day in continuum, and then from that place growing food and supporting and relieving suffering, now we've done something with it. Yeah.
And that's even as and a more advanced stage of just showing up for Qigong. It's like now just showing up with Qigong in your everyday life.
Being Qigong.
That's something that people do and they have never even heard of or practiced Qigong. Like somebody who just joined Camille is like on her stage and in her work that she does, I've seen her do sparkly sunshine Qigong and share that with the world. And it's as if teachers like yourself and myself and many people on the planet sort of just guide us to solid paths, like paths that have already been blazed. And that's something that I found with your teachings in Qigong and in meditation and in Chinese medicine. It's just like, it's almost like this weight off my shoulders, like, I don't have to go through the thicket and the brambles to pave this way into a mystical, happy life. It's just like the ancients, the ancestors did it for us, and we can walk paths like meditation and Qigong and Chinese medicine, and just like, progressively progressively unfolding how we can show up better for the world. And you're someone who I personally have witnessed show up for so many people and show up in a way, in many different ways, and not just permeates, what you do permeates uh, everything. It goes to the land that you touch and the people's hearts that you touched, and that's something that I strive to embody myself and also share with anyone who works with me, is that you have almost this responsibility in this world to show up and not just walk asleep. Just show up with your good intention and with your heart. And I really would be interested in your take on the power of intention, like how your intention is steering the reality that you share with others.
That intention piece. Whew, it's heavy. It's heavy because it's felt regardless of our external form. You know, we could show up with all the right feathers and clothes and the right stage persona and all that, but the intention behind it. It's authenticating. It really reinforces the authenticity of our truth of where we're at. Intention is a mind thing in some degree, and where the mind goes, the energy follows. So sometimes, even though I'm working in the most purest of alignment, if my mind and my intention isn't aligned right, the energy won't flow as possible as it could. You'll still be doing pretty good just by the mechanics of the alignment and practice. But intention's really interesting. I mean, as an example, when I was a student some 20 years ago, I had an uncle who worked at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. He was one of the highest guys in Guantanamo, and he was responsible for some of the interrogating. And there was scandal, and the congressman from DC had called him, "What the heck are you doing? What's going on?" And I just happened to have spontaneously had this upwelling that I needed to call him. And I called him between clients while I was on shift. You know, I had to call him. I called my uncle, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, you won't believe, I just got off the phone with this person and that. And I had to talk about this and that." And I just was that sounding board. And I go back to my session and I, shake it off, and I do my work, and I do the shots and the needles. And the lady next week comes back. She's like, "What the heck did you do to me?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Usually when I work with you, I'm just in such a bliss state for so long, and this time I cried the entire week."
Whoa.
What was going on? What was going on for you? Well, why was that so heavy for me? And that was one of my first little smacks upside the face as far as intention and energy. That wasn't front mind. That was back mind. The impact of that communication with my uncle. And I thought I had cleared myself out and was focused in my mind through my vision and awareness to connect to this being, but that transferred. So yeah, intention's super heavy, and that's part of the beauty of the practice, right? Bring it back now, bring it back now. Where's my mind? Where's my breath? Where's my mind? Where's my breath? Where's my intention? Who is this person? In Qigong, we use a lot of visualizations to recruit the intention, to trap the intention, to hold the monkey mind in a singular pursuit. We do a lot of counting in Qigong too, which is often frustrating to new students. It was for me and a lot of my co-students. We'd ask our masters, "Do we have to count? Can't I just drift off into space?" I'm like, "No, you have to. The monkey mind. The monkey mind." They kept telling us, the monkey mind. You count to contain the monkey mind. Keep it here. Where the mind is, the energy moves. And so we need to keep the intention here. And then in Tai Chi, they speak towards the E, the intentional awareness of the movement of the energy in the body. Tai Chi speaks a lot towards intention as well. So intention is super important. Now, getting back to your original question, how do you stay passionate in practice? My advice would be aware of intention, but also forget intention. Just show up and do your practice. Be kind to yourself. Get 51%. You don't have to be on it 100% of the time. But when you remember, use your visualizations, And as a body worker, I often play a positive transference game where I visualize the people I'm working on as a deity or a holy saint or a person that I hold in severe admiration. So that when I'm working on them, my intent gets brought to the highest level possible. So I play, that's a positive transference. It's transference because it's not really them. I'm transferring energy from one being onto another. But it's a positive thing and it's an up-leveling. So I read the Ramayana as a Hindu epic about Ram, Sita, and Hanuman. And it's full of characters. And I often choose to visualize the person I'm working on as one of these characters from a Hindu epic. So that I approach them with greater reverence, which brings me into devotion, which brings me into greater spirit of heart, which potentiates the connectivity of the energy through me. So intention's everything. Try to hold positive intention, and when you slip, be kind to yourself. It happens. Bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. Annapurna. Mind runs, come back. Mind runs, come back. Mind runs, come back. These are all meditation practices to start working on the honing of the intention. It goes quite far. Because once the intention can be held on one point, one can practice moving that one point of intentional awareness through the body. And once masters moving intentional awareness within the form, one can place intentional awareness outside of oneself, to a person at a distance, to a place in the past or the future. And then we could start doing all sorts of really cool stuff. But without focus of intention, it's just monkey mind sprinkler. And sometimes I had a client this morning say, I'm thinking about getting off Maui. It's just too intense. All my thoughts are manifesting. I'm like, yeah, the good and the bad.
Yeah.
It sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Maui is such a portal of that clarity, and it's so far away from other people's intentions that it's like you don't get that collective soup where you have to sometimes go, ooh, I don't like that taste, I'm gonna have to like change my bowl, or like empty my bowl to refresh my mind and not get caught up in the monkey mind sprinkler. And that's what you described as such a social, for lack of a better term, magic that you can use to better somebody's life, not even just your own life, where most people are aware of now at some level that thoughts and feelings create reality, and there's the book The Secret and all these people getting into law of attraction. But what I'm taking into full awareness, and something that you touched on, is we're also doing that for other people. We're collectively voting on what sort of success we want to see in our friends' lives, in our families' lives, and even just strangers' lives. And what you said is something that a lot of people practice, and if they don't, it would be very beneficial if they did, understanding that if you see your friend as this low, oh, they keep messing up, this and other thing, you're like projecting that into their lives. But then if you see that same friend and say like, oh, I see all their magnificent qualities, they're so this, that, and other thing, and like elevate them, that affects their reality. It's almost like a vote towards their highest good. And we're so obsessed with, in today's society, we're so obsessed with physically being a philanthropist, or physically being on stage showing people that we're doing charity. But the real work is, what are we voting for collectively? We have this I'm just gonna poke it and drop it with politics, but Trump is basically the collective American consciousness. He's basically, from what I've seen of him, he's kind of like this collective vote of what people want. People want money, they want fame, they want to be a celebrity, and that's like a collective dream for America. And it's like, oh, there it is. Look at how ugly it is. It's just, look at how like that intention isn't really what our hearts truly want. And I'd love to hear your take on that, like what our intentions have in terms of collective reality, including our friends and family and our strangers that we just pass by, and we're kind of like that angel, and we just look at them with a smile and send them some golden chi, some heart energy. What do you feel about that, like collective intentionality?
And when I first started studying Qigong, my master did a lot of games. And one of them is we were deployed upon the city as an army of golden turtles. And we were told to go onto public buses and public places and to go into our turtle uniforms and to turn into golden turtles and to pretend to become glowing golden turtles and observe the effect in our environment and the way people started behaving. It was an active experiment that we were deployed upon. It was awesome. And we all came back and said, yeah, I turned into a turtle on the bus. Everybody was down and arguing, and all of a sudden people started singing and whistling and smiling and helping. And we did a collective chi experiment in our initial training along this, which is really cool. Getting back to one of your first questions about humbling oneself, this subject of intention for me is daunting. Because this power of manifestation and the mind power, to me, is a very small, weak, little thing. There's a much different, much stronger resonance emitting from our being, calling forth things from the universe that comes from the level of our soul. As a being, as a soul being, we have things potentially to do and work on in this lifetime. And we have belief structures as soul beings that restrict us from fully emerging and igniting into the one. And the soul is extremely hungry, in my belief, to burn through these things. The longing to reconnect to the source from which we've all come is so strong that the soul is battling to untie itself by also resonating intention to our environment. And in my observation and belief, it's stronger than my mentating can do. So on one hand, intention is really important. On the other hand, there's nothing we can do about it. Our soul that we're not even aware of is playing out a script on such a superordinate level that at best I could sit back in awe, in absolute awe, and watching the truth of my manifestation in my life, even if it's mismatched to the mental projections of my mind being. My mind may say I want this or that, but when I look around, I believe God is in the is business. What is. And if there is universal spirit, it is all of it. And if it's all of it, it's what's going on around me. And if I'm connected to all that, then I'm resonating that into my world. If I really want to know what my intention is, take a wide look around us. Take a look at your backside and your side also. It's everywhere. So the intention around me, I believe, is more largely called from the resonant of the soul than the resonant of the mind. Now, that being said, the resonant of the mind does have an impact on us and those around us. So we might as well try to paddle in the direction of the river. But please try to sense the direction of the river. Because we can paddle dang hard with the mind and just go in a circle like an eddy. And we can use dang really hard and even go uphill. Or places that might check out the flow and then align aligns with that. So it gets back to clarifying the body, doing the Qigong, doing the Tai Chi, doing the emotional work to open up the body, to connect the resonance of spirit through our form so we more clearly know where it is we're supposed to apply our energy, and then apply the mind to the resonant structure of the soul, which is all ultimately connected to spirit, supported by the vastness of spirit. And now we could do something to serve humanity. Now we could serve our soul. Now we've got the whole universal heart's mandate pouring for the depth of our being. We could work 10, 12 hours a day. Not just, and then, yeah, liberation, samsara.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, if there's a it, if there's a it, that is it. And it reminds us, my friend said something the other day that we're talking about the mind, and he said there's this story of this monk who went into the mountains, and he came back after 8 years in the mountains, and everybody expected him to have these enlightening stories and all of these succinct, enlightened wisdoms to share with the village, and it's comical, but it's emotional too. He's like, you know what? After 8 years in the mountains, my mind didn't get any more pleasant, and it's such a reminder to tune into that soul frequency, that heart wave, that heart vibration that we, even like you said, the Buddhists in their vast wealth of wisdom try to get out of the wave or try to get out of the storm, but to be in that soul presence, there's such magnificent things that happen. And that's, in my experience of Maui, was my ultimate liberation from the suffering that I experienced within and in New York and in all forms. And it's just a liberating experience. And I didn't get there from the mind. For certain, I didn't get there from the mind. It was a soul pull. It was like a soul, get over there. Your friends are there. your mentors are there. But it was like there wasn't any thought process. It wasn't like I didn't think, oh, I'm going to Maui because there's A, B, and C, friends, mentors, and paradise. It's like my soul was like, get over there, because forget thinking about it. Just get over there. And for people to follow that is essential. And we got about 4 minutes to an hour long of how long our talk is. Do you have any time restraints? Do you like to get going in 1 hour, or?
I've got a 11:30 client.
Okay.
So I've got 30 more minutes until I have to change hats.
Okay. All right. So that gives enough time for. I'd like to ask, and obviously you share whatever you want to share, but I'd like to ask a bit about what your travel to India taught you. I know that's a huge question, but
well, I found God. I found a lot. I mean, all right. So I was raised in a Western society and culture that told me that science had the answer. So I became a scientist, and I got a bachelor's of science in neuroscience from UC Davis. I was doing research for the government, for the Air Force, on cognitive perception using EEG machines, and I was going to meetings with the scientists, how to set up science experiments and how to analyze the data. And I got into science and said, nah, these guys are, I mean, thank God they're there, but they're chasing their tail. Grantsmanship, you only get grants if you look for something that wants to be seen. There's a few other things. I also didn't believe that isolating the world to two variables, null and alternative, and then re-extrapolating it back into chaos theory would hold. I didn't think you could isolate all the variables to two. And even if you could, when you put it back in the world, that relationship would hold the same if you extrapolated it. So I had to give up science. So I got into mysticism and books. I went to Asia to study Buddhism, and I lived in ashrams in Buddhist countries and studied Buddhist practices. And it taught me a lot. It got me really far, and I got a lot, and it was wonderful. But it didn't get me what I wanted. They didn't have the burning that I was looking for. I wanted the burning. So then I went to India, and the Hindus had the burning. Oh, did they have the burning? Oh, did they have the burning? The chaos was a little bit too confusing for me, so I would retreat to Buddhist enclaves to regroup, and I would switch back and forth between Buddhist and Hindu areas within India. India taught me a lot of things. For any of you India travelers out there, right on, aloha. India will show you anything's possible. You think we're free in this culture? No, not even close. India, you're free. You can do whatever you want, whatever you want. India taught me that the smell of shit and the smell of roses was the exact same thing. as a spiritual seeker, that was very useful because I didn't have to seek bliss anymore. I was trying to see it in all things. There's so many funky smells in India